myself as a manager, one of the conversations I've had with people who work for me is, I've even had them pull up their resume and said, hey, we need to update your resume. And I was like, it's not because I'm foul. It's not because I'm getting rid of you. It's just because I want you to be very clear about, hey, what's the value that you're getting out of this job?
And now we're going to switch over to leaving a job. What are some steps to take to prepare for your departure? I would even say some steps to see if your departure is amicable, or some steps to see if you're just departing, dearly departing. So one thing I want to talk about in leaving a job, just to highlight some things we discussed in the last one. Who are you? Where are you? Where are you going? So, is your resume ready? Let's start there.
I think first, before you officially leave, I do think even before you come to the conclusion that, hey, I'm going to leave, I think you should update your resume, because I think you should get a feel for, hey, what have I done since I've been here? And I think it's better for you to get that feel for, hey, what have I done since I've been here? Because you may realize, like, hey, you know what? I haven't really gotten the experiences that I should have gotten. And maybe it's not that I need to leave. Maybe it's just, hey, I need to have a conversation to have a slight adjustment in what my role and responsibilities are, just to make sure, hey, I can get some value out of this before I leave it.
Right. And don't do it at work. I think I've kind of done it before. But word to the wise, just kind of take some time at home. One, you don't want to be playing the game of my resume is up. If someone's going to see it, then I have to explain kind of, why is your resume up? And then you start getting the whispers of so-and-so's resume is up. I think they're leaving. But if you do it at home or in some personal time, then you'll be able to think through clearly without any distractions, your resume, your body of work, what you're doing. You can add those adjective words or words of action to really show your impact and change. But I guess the point here is take some focus time when you're updating your resume so you can really identify those points you want to make and you want to be seen.
Yeah, and I think one of the good practices that I learned during my time at GE was whenever we met with someone, we had to do kind of like this career roadmap. And pretty much what it was pretty much a PowerPoint deck. It had an arrow going from the bottom left to the top right, and it just showed your career progression, the different roles that you had done. Hey, what were some of the big things? So it's like, in theory, you were updating a pictorial version of your resume to where it was a common thing. So like when you were meeting with someone, like if you did like when I did a one-on-one with the CFO of a business for the first time, to give them a little bit of context of who I was, I would send that to them beforehand. So it's like you're constantly thinking about the things that will go in your resume. So it's like if you are in an environment, I guess if you create an environment like that to where that becomes a normal thing, to where I think, hey, you can update it. But like I said, if you're not in an environment like that, like Chris said, I mean, if you're at work, I would say don't update it at work.
No. Especially if the culture is toxic, especially if everyone knows that the manager is toxic maybe. And when people start seeing resumes up, it becomes a flash of this person's leaving and maybe I should jump out too, or then you start seeing an even worse situation in the culture.
Yeah, and I think for a manager to create the environment where you are regularly talking to the people on your team about, hey, what's going on in their resume. Because I think, for myself as a manager, one of the conversations I've had with people who work for me is, I've even had them pull up their resume and said, hey, we need to update your resume. And I was like, it's not because I'm foul. It's not because I'm getting rid of you. It's just because I want you to be very clear about, hey, what's the value that you're getting out of this job? And I don't know. Like I said, I never told HR I was having this conversation. But, if the person was going through updating their resume and they're like, man, I'm not getting the experience I thought, then hey, let's make some adjustments
Right,
in what you're
right.
doing. Or if they're like, man, I feel like I've maxed out, I've done as much as I can, then I'm like, you need to be looking for your next role. Like, I need to do what I can as a leader to help you get to that next level.
Right.
Because I don't want you staying here. Because if you stay in this role, any role, whether it's, you're talking to someone who works on your team or whether you're thinking about yourself, if you stay in a role past the point of getting any value from it, it's not going to end up
Yes.
good for you.
Yes, because then you start taking it for granted. You start using the flexibility as a reason for doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, and it just becomes a even more toxic situation. And you really put yourself on that bubble of, I know I'm skirting the line, and if I get caught, then I'm gonna try to use this as a reason why. Versus you're being ahead of the game, and you're always staying on top of your career and making those right decisions. So let's say you've made the decision to leave for whatever reason, good, bad, indifferent, right or wrong, whatever the reason, you've decided to leave. What is something? Oh, I got a question.
Okay.
You got an interview scheduled. What do you do? I'm sick. I'm working from home. Kind of how we plan the. I need to go on this interview, and they scheduled it at 10 o'clock in the morning when I should be at work. How does that work? What advice do we have for that?
I think if you know that you are looking for a new job, and depending on the culture or the environment that you're in, I think you want to be honest about with yourself to say, hey, I may be looking for a new job. I need to save up some vacation days, just point blank. You just need to save up the vacation days. I'm not a fan of coming up with a lie. I mean, I've seen some people do it, and I've been tempted to do it myself. Now, what I would say I've been fortunate for is when I've changed jobs, I've actually been moving states. So I was just honest with the person I was talking to. Like, when I left Chicago to go to DC, like, hey, my grandmother had just been like sick or in the hospital a couple months before, and I'm like, hey, I want to make a life decision to move closer to family. Jobs I'm looking at are in DC. I want to be honest with you about that, and that's kind of how I approach that. And then even with moving here to Charlotte, like I had talked to my manager, like, hey, my wife got a job in Charlotte. We're moving to Charlotte. Based on what I want to do, I want to start looking at other roles. I'll look at doing something remote here, but I was honest, so I didn't necessarily have to deal with, hey, my job interview's on the other side of town, or hey, it's down the street. So how do I get out of my current job? I mean, speaking as a person who hasn't had to actually do it, I would say, is save up vacation days, or if you can, create that environment where, where you're honest about, hey, this is what's going on. Because I think if you have that good relationship with your manager, or if you're working for somebody who actually cares about your development, they shouldn't be holding you back if you want to interview at a move within the company, or if you want to go somewhere else to another company. Like, if they really care about you, then hey, they should probably support.
And that's a good point to bring up, because I feel like a lot of people feel like I use the term black eye. Like, if I say I'm interviewing, then my manager is immediately going to give me the crap work, or they're not going to speak to me anymore, or I'm just going to become this black sheep of the group, when I'm really trying to make a decision for myself or for the best interest of the team, because maybe you've maxed out and you want to allow somebody else to come in and learn from the role. Maybe your manager is not moving, so there's really no more upward progression. It's just, this is a good move for you. So I would say, if we're talking a prime situation, you've already asked your manager for promotion or for more work, and that conversation's already been had, and maybe that opportunity isn't there. So being honest about it may be a great situation as well. Or to the contrary, you've spoken to your manager about it and it's a negative result, and maybe that conversation is, well, then this is going to be the decision that I'm going to make. Either way, use the PTO or be honest about it. I can say I've kind of done a wide range of them all. I've caught a cold a couple of times. Sometimes it just happens, and sometimes you're really not even looking. You're just kind of seeing what the market is out there, and you come across something that catches your eye.
Yeah.
And it becomes that right move that kind of fit at the time that may not been when you planned, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So it's all types of situations.
And I would say, I mean, is being very selective. Because I've met some people. They're like, well, they're putting in all these resumes, they're getting all these calls for these first round interviews, and I'm like, okay, all right. If you currently have a job and you don't have that situation where you can be honest with your current manager, and you're taking all these days off to do all these different interviews, like, you aren't gonna take all of these jobs. So it's like, be a little bit more selective about what you actually go interview for. Like, you don't have to interview for every job that calls you. Like,
Right.
goes back to like being clear about what are you looking for in the next role.
Right.
And really, I mean, I guess it's like during that interview process, some people feel like, man, I gotta take what I can get. But you should be a little bit more
Yes.
selective, or I guess you'd say you should be a little bit more thorough about your own best interest to say, you know what, I don't have to take anything that comes up. I'm going to ask some questions. Does this job actually give me what I'm looking for? If not, don't waste your time or potentially ruin your relationship at your current place of work to go interview at some place you're not even going to take the job at.
Right. And then you get that offer, and then you're like, no, and you just really, in some ways, burn the bridge. Maybe you're using a recruiter, and maybe you have to have that awkward, it was okay, but I'm not interested in it. But now they're interested in you, and you're kind of in that gray area of how do I say no without being a jerk about it. But I absolutely support that point of being very selective about the roles that you take and even the interviews that you take. Because if you're meeting with everyone, if everyone in Charlotte knew you were interviewing, it's kind of like, what's going on with Chris?
I mean, because most markets are pretty. Most markets that people are in are pretty small market to where a lot of people know different people. I mean, even if you go on LinkedIn, you type in any company that you're interviewing, more than likely you have a connection somewhere there. So I mean, and you're in a market, especially a market like Charlotte, to where, I mean, it's a big market, but it's small enough that, hey, communication gets around.
Yes.
Like, I remember, like, when you were interviewing at a place where one of my coworkers came to me and said, hey, I saw, the guy that you do the show with was starting a new job. I'm like, oh, how did you know? And it's just like, the market is small enough for that. So, like, if you're just interviewing at anybody who calls you back, it's just like, you're probably not going to land in the place you want to be, and you're probably not being strategic enough about it.
Because then it really speaks to why are you, if you're interviewing that much and you're that active, why are you really looking? Are you looking because you're really being selective about your next move, or are you looking because you're trying to get out of a situation and you just want to take the first thing out there?
Yeah.
So I would say be very selective about that. So we've kind of talked about preparation, your resume. We talked about that whole interview process, and now it's time for you've accepted the offer, you've taken the offer. What's the respectable transition time? What's that minimum? Yeah, what's that minimum? And then what's that too much?
I would say again, I'm a little bit different because in the roles that when I have changed. Like, when I've left a company, I've literally, like, moved states or to where I had a little bit more heads up. Like, I can't remember if I've ever taken a job at a different company in the same city that I was in. I did once. I did once, and that was, like, early in my career. But I had already been honest with my manager. So I had talked to my manager, I think, like, as soon as I got the offer to accept the job. And I had a good relationship with the manager at the time, so I gave I think it was like a 3 to 4 week notice. Because we were
just so helpful.
Because I mean, and my personal opinion is because this is what I would want from someone, or the type of relationship I want to create for the people on my team, is that, hey, if you are going to a new job, like someone that's working for me, we sat down, we talked about they were going to a new job. I could tell they were nervous, because, there's a lot of anxiety about that, talking to a person like, hey, I'm accepting a new job. There's a lot of anxiety there to where I'm kind of switching it around, like, okay, all right, where are you going? What are you going to be doing? Hey, what can we do in the next 3 weeks or the next 2 weeks or the next week, however long you gave me? What can we do in that next week to help set you up so you can be successful where you're going? Because if you've already decided to go, I mean, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and talk you out of it. And if I trusted you as a good employee, then I trust that, hey, you made whatever decision you needed to make for your family.
Right.
So when I go, I said, if I were going to take a job in the same city, my perspective is I would probably say at a minimum, I think the standard is 2 weeks. But I think you got to kind of gauge it based on, hey, do you want to keep that relationship alive? Like, do you want to keep that relationship healthy? Because if that's a relationship that you want to keep, then maybe 2 weeks is not enough based on the type of work that you do. Because, like, if you leave it in 2 weeks, it's going to throw that person in a bad spot and you want to keep that relationship alive, chances are 2 weeks ain't going to be enough. You probably need to give them a little bit more time if you want to keep the relationship healthy.
That's hard. That's hard. Because I would say 2 weeks is average and standard, and that's kind of the starting point. Now, the last time that I had to kind of go down this path, I was asked for like a month. I actually even thought about a month, and I was like, man, a month? Either if you need a month, I wasn't doing what I'm supposed to do, right? Because that tells me that my team isn't equipped to step up. There's no one on my team equipped enough to step into my place without me being there for a month and kind of spoon feeding them everything that I'm doing. And yeah, so I didn't like a month. So we had to bring that down a little bit. And then the question became of like, what risk do you pose? Is information that I know that no one else on the team knows that I needed to transition? And there was, but we still could do it in 2 weeks. So I guess I'm saying, I mean, I agree with your point. It really depends on the role because there is a lot of risk. And depending on what you do, there's information that you learn. There's things that you control or organize or keep or have secure or whatever. But 2 weeks may not be enough time, especially depending on your seasonality of work and where you are, or you're approaching it, or you're at the end of it, or you're in your slow season. So I think the average or standard would be 2 weeks, and then you kind of take it from there. But I just find it really almost excessive to say more than 3, because then, like, why are you leaving? Am I really trying to, like, what do you owe that company to make sure that they're okay for every single decision or every single email that came across your plate? And I flip the script as well. They don't really give people a month's time when they make the decision. Like, if you're going back to be from a company's perspective, they've either been preparing or they kind of know the direction that they're going, and they're ready to step in there as soon as they make their decision. So why is it the employee's perspective or the employee's responsibility to make sure that the company is well taken care of when I walk out of the doors? Kind of.
And I would say, I don't necessarily think it's the employee's responsibility to make sure, hey, that this ship will still sail after I leave. I think it really comes down to the person and the relationships. I look at it from that perspective because I think that business world is a very small world. A lot of the people that you probably interact with now, your paths will cross again at some point. And I think I look at it from that perspective of, hey, if at some point down the road my path will cross with this person, or hey, they may know someone that knows someone that, hey, I may need to leverage that relationship. If I don't leave this in good hands, then I could potentially set myself up for a pitfall later on down the road.
What would that be of? Oh, he took another role and he left in 2 weeks and he didn't give me 4. Like, I guess I'm challenging that thought to see what would be that negative. Because people, in some situations, they're not going to like it. It's going to be a shock. It may be a surprise. It may be like, oh, man, I'm gonna hate to see you go. We really like you on the team. Yeah, but I found a better role.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in a role where, let's say you're in the middle of working on a project. Let's say, for example, you're in finance or and you're working on the annual operating plan. Now, that's usually probably like October-ish to like December type project. Let's say you have that conversation let's say beginning of November. This annual planning process, it's very difficult to just bring somebody in new to pick up where you left off if you're in the middle of working through that. So, I mean, if that's a situation where you leave in the middle of that, you're really throwing either the rest of your team, the people below you, or even the people above you, you're throwing them in a tough spot to where it's already a tough process to get through. But if you're leaving in the middle of it, that just adds even more complexity to where, I mean, I'm thinking about for the person, the people who are staying are like, man, this was already tough enough. But then you deciding to leave in the middle of it makes it even tougher to where, I mean, the reality of it is people are going to be in their feelings. And that may
True.
not be a relationship you can mend after you leave.
True. So, now I'm being man of the people. I put my people hat on. So, in that situation, in the middle of the project, then I would ask the question, I would pose these items to discuss. One, what's going on in that project to make sure or to make someone of that stature want to leave in the middle. Mm-hmm. Two, that's a great opportunity for someone else on the team to step up. Whatever that means, more work, working out, working late, working with someone they never worked with before, whatever the case may be. Now this vacancy creates that opportunity. Or three, now you see how valuable I really am, and you're gonna miss the boat. So if I touch base with you later on, 6 months, a year down the line, then they're gonna be like, man, Chris, Terrell, man, they killing it. I hate that they left the company because we really needed them and we struggled without them. Now that may be a little pat myself on the back. I can't wait, but that's what that situation causes. Because now when I came to you with either my request or my items that we needed to discuss or whatever created that situation to make that person want to leave in the middle, and you disregarded it, and then I leave, and you feel like you need all of this hand holding to get through the rest of the project, then you missed the boat.
No, I would agree. And like I said, I think why you're leaving plays a very, very big role. Now, if you're leaving because, hey, there was a problem there, I would say all of the civility that I would normally practice, hey, there's an adjustment here. Yep. I'm not saying I mean, because if I'm leaving because there is a problem, I'm not going to be as civil as what I've been describing. When I've left, like I said, my experiences have been, amicable. So when I've been leaving, it's like, okay, I'm leaving on good terms. You good, I'm good. We're parting ways. Now, if this is a bad breakup, just like, I'm probably not going to be I'm probably not going to be this nice if it's a bad breakup. I mean, but I do think, like I said, I mean, when I think about leaving a job, and just based on kind of like the way I've approached it is, I have seen like when someone leaves a job, they get called back to do some contract work on the side. And one of the things I've always looked at it from, I guess, an entrepreneurial perspective is when I leave this job, I want to be able to say that, hey, if I leave this job, that if they ever needed to hire someone to do some contract work, I would be the person that they would think about. Not necessarily saying they have to call me, but that's how I want to leave the relationship. Now, if it was a bad situation where it's just like, hey, you know what, this just ain't working out at all, then I'm just like, you know what, I will give you a 2 weeks notice, let you know ahead of time. I will do what I can in the meantime and try to get, whatever I was working on, get those affairs in order. So when I leave, hey, here's the playbook I put together for you. Hey, it's good if we don't call each other anymore.
That's fair. So we've discussed you've gotten the offer, you put your notice in. We're going to start at 2 weeks. I think anything less than 2 weeks, that's when you start burning bridges because you're not allowing them enough time to prepare for the transition. And when I say 2 weeks, I'm saying like 5 business days or 2 weeks versus kind of 2 weeks of your schedule, which is like 2 days here, 2 days there, I'm out. But you put in your notice, which is generally 2 weeks, sometimes more, depending on the situation. Depending on the transition, good, bad, or indifferent, you could be running out the door or shaking hands and throwing kind of team lunches and kind of celebrating people's departure. So anything else that we should discuss when it comes to leaving a job? Is it any risk involved, any exposure, like anything else out there?
I do think, I mean, like I said, depending on the nature of the job that you're leaving, I mean, some people, you should definitely think about the NDAs that you sign or the non-competes. If you have signed a non-compete, you need to be a little bit more strategic about what you're looking at next. Because I've had some people where they signed a non-compete and they were leaving their job and they thought that they were going to go work for the competitor, and it's just like you just kind of burn your bridges because you told the people that you've been working with you want to leave, do something different. You thought you were going to go work at a competitor, but you got a non-compete. Non-compete. Now you find yourself in a legal battle.
Yes.
Like, that's not a position you want to be in.
Yes.
So I think you got to be smart about that.
Yes.
And then also, I do think that if you are leaving a job, it's just, I would say, never go in thinking like, oh, it's just going to be so much better because I'm changing.
Right.
I think you got to have a sober mindset about leaving. And I'd also think is taking time to really reflect on, hey, what was the value I got out of the company or the position that I'm leaving, so that you make sure you leave with that value in mind, so you can take it to be more effective at whatever you're doing next.
Oh, I got something. The emotional, I think you said a great word, like sobriety of the situation, but being emotionally aware of where you are when you leave. And I say that because you could be angry, you could be excited, you can have all these lists of things that you didn't like about your past job or jobs, and you need to be coming into the new role with the clear, open mind and open heart of what you're stepping into.
Yeah.
Now, there are things that you're going to bring in as best practices or ways of making changes, but you shouldn't be bringing the emotional toxicity from the old role. So taking that time to clear yourself of that stress, of that emotion, of that anger, of all of that, whatever you have going on.
Yeah.
So you can walk into this new role, this new relationship. It's like a relationship. You gotta leave that old boyfriend or girlfriend in the past, some time to yourself, and then you walk into this new one ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true because I think about it. I mean, in reality, it is like a relationship. I mean, you don't want to, you don't want to start a new job on a rebound.
Right.
I mean, you don't
there
want
are
to be
rebound
like, hey,
jobs, right?
Because I think I've seen some people do it and they stay at those jobs for like 2-3 weeks, maybe a couple months, and then they're like, well, this isn't what I thought it was. And it's just like, I think you, like I said, you do have to give your self time to sober up emotionally, mentally. I mean, it may have been a job where you were working a ton of hours, so where it's like you're just too tired to think clearly. So, hey, maybe you need some time just to get a break and kind of rethink things, and then go out and pursue, hey, what's my next decision that I need to make?
Right.
Because I think if you don't have a sober mindset about it, then you find yourself taking a rebound job.
Right.
And rebound jobs are never good.